Hi, welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Shannon Eliot. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Adrian Bernard to discuss the concept of hearing voices, the good, the bad, and what most people don't know. Hearing and communicating with voices has brought Adrian a deep understanding of what it means to suffer and experience profound happiness. For the last 3 years, he has worked as a mental health advocate in Santa Cruz County. He currently works as a peer support worker at Second Story Respite House and is also involved with statewide stigma reduction projects and the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Adrian dreams of the days when all people have a community with which to grow. Welcome, Adrian. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about your experiences with hearing voices. When was the first time you heard them, and what was that experience like?
I remember I first heard them when I was sitting quietly in a room, and I could feel them and sense them just on the other side of reality, I guess, what I would say. And so just murmuring and not words that were really too clear. I heard them again when I was 25. After they had left, I started self-medicating in high school, and then at 25, they came back when I was in the midst of another kind of breakthrough moment. And it was loud and intense and painful. And then I asked them to go away after getting clarity, and they pretty much went away. And then they came back during my last breakdown at 29 or so. I think it was 10 or 11 years ago that I really had real issues, and they've been here ever since.
How did they change between the time you first heard them and when you had your bigger breakdown at 29?
When I first heard them, they were just barely there. When I second heard them, the second time I heard them, intense and angry and family. They were family members. I even had my own voice that I could speak through to them. And then when it changed when I was 29, I couldn't handle it at that moment. I asked them to leave. I asked them nicely, asked them however I did. And then when I was 29 and falling apart, they came in a very loud way. I drove to Mexico and came back on a spur of a moment, both there and back. And then they came in various forms and more supportive. And then there was the majority of them were pretty supportive, and there were many groups of them that were speaking to me.
So what do the good ones or the supportive ones sound like, and what do the bad ones sound like?
The good ones, for the most part, they're always good. The good ones pretty much protect me from the bad ones if they can, but they also let the bad ones have their day too, because they got to have the balance. And so they tell me good things about myself. They help me make decisions. They're such integrated into my life so deeply that now I have an instant counsel with which to work. And the bad ones is I have one that's pretty much a trickster, and he'll taunt and harass and tell me how much he hates me and wants me destroyed and hates everything that I stand for, if I stand for anything. And then there's other ones too that are different kinds of groups that speak to me in different ways as well.
So what's the ratio of the good voices to the bad voices? Is it only that one negative trickster voice, or are there multiple sort of negative ones?
There's about three. There's the one that's really negative. I think of him as my brother, blood brother I call him. And then there's also one that is a former friend that has been around, and he's not around as much anymore, but when I'm going through ordeals, he's there. And then there's also groups that have a darker edge to them, which kind of tolerate how I project to the world and as opposed to the trickster one who tries to get me in situations that are not good for me or something. But even then, he always respects. He loves, but the spirits, I call them spirits, says that he loves me with his hate, and so I kind of balance and say, okay, I can go with it a little bit.
So how do you manage that trickster voice? That sounds a bit overwhelming at times.
I think that since I consider him my actual brother, it helps me to have more patience and tolerance. And as far as accepting him, I love him. I mean, I've learned that if I'm sharing love with the spirits, I don't call them voices so much, I call them spirits. But if I'm sharing my connection with them, and however that manifests, if it's energy that hurts me or is good for me, I find that what I give out is good energy, and so in some level, whatever comes back at me comes back as good energy too, even though it comes veiled in darkness sometimes.
Does the trickster spirit give you lessons through his activities and through what he's telling you?
I mean, sometimes, I hadn't thought of that, but sometimes he has such an irreverence, and so I think the greatest gift that he gives me is being able to express things that I'm not comfortable expressing. So it's like I kind of live vicariously through him, and so he holds a truth of living that I don't resonate with so much. So it's like I honor his irreverence when he says something that's totally outlandish about me or about anybody. I go, I don't know how you do it. And so it's just that dialogue can then open up in that way.
So other people who would experience what you're experiencing, they might choose to silence them through various means, silencing the voices. Why do you choose to embrace them instead of silencing them?
Well, I want to make them a strength. I mean, I want, if I can, for one, they're good to me, I think, for the most part, and they give sound counsel, and that we get along, but to silence them is silencing parts of myself that need to be expressed. And if it's not even parts of myself, it's something bigger than myself, and so that needs to be expressed. So it's always about trying to connect to all realities versus trying to shun any parts of what comes in. And when I wrestle with my own personality often enough as a result of those energies coming in.
So even the painful reality or the painful perspective is still worth having as opposed to not having it at all?
Yeah, it is.
How was your decision not to silence the spirits received by your friends and family at first?
At first, I think they were mostly, I don't think it was a conscious decision for me to say, they're amazed, I'll say. That my mom and my brother, they're, on the one hand, my mom is amazed that I've gone through all this and still been able to be upbeat and positive.
Yeah.
But then family, it's how they accept it because I accept it, and I'm able to put enough of a positive reflection on it that they have substantial buy-in as well. They appreciate what the voices are. They appreciate hearing about them. It becomes more intriguing if I can express what that reality is to me and to them, and how that interaction. Because I mean, really, that's the opportunity we have with hearing voices as people and spirits, that we can really look at things differently if we're saying, well, what is this, and how do we get at the root of what's going on in our lives, in anybody's life.
So it sounds like your friends and family have been supportive and curious, and that has really helped.
Yes. My former doctor even calls them angels, so it's because, and says defends them when people say bad things. So yeah.
How does all that mental processing weigh on you? You have the good spirits on the one hand, you have the trickster spirit, and then you have a group of other bad ones that occasionally come into the fray. Yeah. That sounds really exhausting and overwhelming. How do you deal with that?
And I'm remembering now, because I forget about the more negative ones that I do. And at this ground level, they're here more, and so they do tear me down pretty regularly. They say the worst possible things at the worst possible times, but that's an opportunity for me to struggle with that too. So it's a balance. It's really a balance of finding, like, being able to see myself in different ways, and that processing of how do I see myself as both hero and monster, and really looking at what does that mean to me, and so how does it weigh on me? It can be tiring at times, but it can also be very rewarding, and wouldn't want to change it. I wouldn't want any of them to go away at all, because they complete a picture in my mind and how I process the world.
How much do you think you've grown since you've heard your first spirit up until now, and weighing all the pros and cons of that?
Do you mean when I was 25 or 29 or 14? I mean,
whatever you consider the beginning of your transformation.
I think the second time I heard them at 25 was the time of really looking at seeing family and what that meant to me. And the second time when different spirits came back and that trickster spirit was there when I was 25 too. He was the one that first came to me. Well, I mean, the evolution has been, I mean, it's been incredible they've been pushing me in the direction of a weight of advocacy. And even though I've resisted all along, knowing that this is the direction I'd be going, that they've constantly for the past 11 years or 10 years been saying, no, you have work to do. You gotta, and so that they're part of my reality now, and the evolution has been incredible, because partially a good part because they build me up. They tell me good things about myself, even as they tear me down sometimes. But I mean, it's the growing pains of living in this situation has been productive.
Why have you resisted their push for you to become an advocate and more active in the advocacy world?
I've always resisted it. I mean, I knew since watching Malcolm X and when I was 19, when I was first going through breakdowns and seeing the the transformation and metamorphosis that he went through and beyond, is that it kind of was a jarring instant in my life, and I can't go back there now because it's not related too much, but left such an impact on me that I always knew that I'd be moving in this direction.
You've spoken a lot about the auditory qualities of these spirits. Do you also sense the spirits as having any physical qualities?
I dream of them sometimes, and I have close friends to the right of me. When I can feel them now. They're out there, and I can feel them. So it's both auditory, but I also feel their presence, and so they are. And then depending on the groups and how they are, yes. When I was going through it at the most intense about 11 years ago, it was. They were very present, and still are. I mean, just about a month and a half ago, I was dreaming of them, and one person came into my dream, and I woke up, recognized, and then fell back asleep, and then another person came to my dream, and just gave this look of like, they're here, they're with me, they're kind, and it was, that was the first time I'd seen them so clearly in my dreamscape, but I do see them when I'm here.
So they're with you both in waking and dreaming states all the time? Are there times where the spirits are more numerous and or frequent than usual, and what do you think causes that?
They're always here. The only question is how intense are my thoughts wrapped around what they're saying, and so it's a matter of intensity. If they're lately they've been fewer in number and not as loud a stage to play on, and so in my mind, and so they. So it's easy to say when I'm stressed that they're here more present, but I find that when I'm stressed, my thoughts are more intense, and they aren't necessarily louder, but the things that they're saying are more impactful. So I'm finding, like I was driving home after a particularly good day, and I hadn't heard the beautiful people sing their beautiful song in a long time. So I was just driving home, and all of a sudden I hear them singing again. And I wasn't even aware it was them. I thought they were just singing something like they were singing we built this city, and the beautiful people would sing the same song over and over and over again, just for hours when they were here. And they started singing again, and I said, "Oh, it's the beautiful people. Welcome back." I said it in my mind, and I was driving home, and then they sang for a little while longer, and then they left. But that was after a good day, so it depends on my mood is related to them in a lot of ways too.
And if you had an especially bad day, what might that look like?
Well, and there's the trickster spirit now. So, he's kind of screaming right now, and so when I'm having a bad day, my thoughts are more. I'm open to more hurtful feelings in myself, and if I'm having a bad day, it's usually that I'm hearing more on this level, the ground level, where I hear them the most, where I hear them more, where I hear them frequently. On the ground level, when I hear them, and I'm in a vulnerable space, that's when more damage can come in, or not damage. I don't feel like I take damage as much as more hurt can come in because they're saying things that are meant to derail me and make me feel unstable and unbalanced. So yeah.
So building on that, how important is peer support in your life?
It's incredible. I mean, even 2.5 months, 3 months ago, I was falling apart for various reasons in my life, and too much stress, and I was having surgery and all kinds of stuff in relationships with people, and I was falling apart, and I got very low on medication, and I was just falling, and so for the first time, really, instead of going further down, and I was drawn back. And I was drawn back by friends and coworkers and family members, and they said, "No, you can't do this. I'm too involved in life to take the time of 9 months or however long it would have been." But I was tempted. I was tempted to go there and join the spirit world again for however long it would have lasted, but I just didn't have the time to do it.
So you're very active in supporting and mentoring others who hear voices. Tell me about your work with that and what that looks like.
It's interesting because I'm fortunate to have good spirits, and a lot of people that have bad, negative voices or spirits, I tend to talk to them about how to embrace it and how to talk to them and how to treat them with respect and still let them know that. So basically trying to shift the perspective from one of shunning and being afraid of to really how can we transform these spirits and voices into something that are good for people. And so that's kind of where I go with that, is just creating a new identity and within that landscape. And that's kind of what I try to do. And I don't know if that's detailed enough, but.
So you say that your spirits, they're mostly good with that really strong negative trickster voice to counterbalance that. For the folks you work with, might the proportion or ratio be the opposite? Maybe they have the one good voice, but then have a much more negative group of voices that is stronger and more numerous?
It varies, yeah. And the reason why I say that I've got mostly good voices, spirits and voices is because I forget about the ones on this level that really, and they're constant. So it's not necessarily that I just have a majority, actually. No, I just forget them because in the moment I connect to them. I connect to the higher parts of that energy. And like even right now I can hear them and I can feel my body kind of drifting and I can hear them kind of welcoming me and you. And they're welcoming all of us here. Let me see what they're saying. They're saying, dang it, don't say that. Moving it doesn't care if it's wonderful. They said, don't say that, moving it doesn't care if it's wonderful. So as I understand it, they're saying it's not really about making a sales pitch or making something that just to be as real as we can with each other and not to sensationalize or not make things so much for the show, and how do we just connect as people. And so that's kind of what they're saying now, and it's interesting.
Do you find that you have to interpret what they're saying? Because what you just told me, it's a little bit fragmented. It's not, it's not perfect English grammar. So how do you work with that?
With what they said?
Yeah.
And to me, I think that in this moment it's different. When I talk to them, it's streamlined. But in this moment, I'm trying to, on the one hand, stay connected to them and stay connected here. So that's the balancing act, is being able to be of both worlds. And that's really that's one of the biggest challenges I have, is not going to them too much and not being immersed in this too much too. So yeah, so it came out a little bit choppy because I couldn't quite. I normally listen to them and they have complete sentences and they talk and it's good, but yeah, I was translating them, I guess.
It's no secret that such a condition is very stigmatized in society quite often, and that there's discrimination that goes along with it. What do you wish that the general population knew about someone who hears voices or engages with spirits?
My mind goes to there's not such difference. That people do. I mean, the internal voices that people, the internal thoughts that people have, a lot of people wonder about that. How does that relate to it? And I would say that these are parts of ourselves that need to be expressed, and that it's not so different from what people experience in their own internal thoughts. And even beyond that, and I think that on some level, I think that these experiences that we go through, whether good or bad, are really the places that society is kind of, we're kind of in this role of kind of really working through the darkness and working through like the intense states of joy as well. But and this is it's people of this, as I see it, who go through I go through, I guess, and what we go through is that it's a part of us healing the hurts of the world, and in that healing we have to take on our own pain. And so how does that transformation take place, and how do we grow from it? And so I think that people in this situation, in my situation, in our situation, are really doing a lot of healing, even though it seems like we're doing a lot of being destroyed, because we're not being destroyed. We can't be destroyed. So we'll continue to grow as a community and see how it plays out.
What do you think is society's biggest misperception of folks who hear spirits? It's often thought that, folks who might hear voices are inherently more violent or inherently scarier to, the general population. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've not seen that. I've not seen violence. I've seen people being scared more than being scary. And I've been in that situation. And that if we can, I've not seen people in the throes of hearing voices, spirits constantly being destructive to another person. I've seen them actually be more open and like welcoming and trying to let people in, even when spirits are saying can't come in. But there's always like an openness that people don't see in society, and there's always it's a dance to get past that struggle that someone goes through where they can't open. And how do we create bridges so that people can come back from this place? And I think that people don't understand that it is possible to reach us. It's just a matter of being present and calm and stable and knowing that this is not, it's not hell, it's not destruction, it's actually can be quite resilient and strong and with openness and love, that it's incredible.
When you hear other people maybe making negative comments about you in public or about just people who hear spirits or voices in general, how does that make you feel?
On the one hand, I accept it and say, okay, this is somebody's worldview, this is where they're coming from. They don't see the other sides that we see and that we know are here. So I can accept that kind of ignorance, I'll say, and I hope that's not too strong a word, but really that lack of knowledge about what it is. And so the information that society gets is somewhat tainted because it's not the real perception. It's a grandstand of something that isn't.
So how does it make you feel when people in public might say something negative about you or something negative about the group of people who hear spirits or voices sort of categorically as a class?
For me, it's about a lack of understanding. So on the one hand, I'm frustrated and disappointed that people buy in so quickly to a negative stereotype or a negative image of something that doesn't accurately portray how we experience the world. So I can accept their worldview. I can accept how they see things. I can accept how they understand things because it comes from a place of ignorance and not knowing. And I don't say that in a negative way. And I also think that aside from the lack of knowing is the greater message that's getting said. And that's the thing that I struggle most with, is how does the bigger picture, what we're creating in the moment in society and however it's being brought to our attention, brought to the light, whatever it may be, that the overall message is what troubles me, that we're moving in a direction that continues to stigmatize and continues to dehumanize on some level. And so that's where I draw the biggest problem. Instead of feeling personally against somebody that's saying something that doesn't make sense, to like, okay, doesn't make sense, but that doesn't make much more sense. And so it's how do we change that? And because once we work there, then this kind of works itself out. And so it's a bit of
getting started at the bigger issue.
Yes.
So piggybacking on the message point, the media is actually playing a very big role in perpetuating stereotypes, probably more than just the average ignorant person. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you feel when you read media pieces or watch media pieces that are perpetuating that false link, either stereotypes or the false link between hearing voices and violence?
I don't read or watch the news. I don't read the paper. I try to stay as clear of it as possible so that I'm kind of keeping my own thoughts to myself, I guess. But when I hear from conversation with people, I struggle with it. And I know that the Associated Press is now starting to change the language a little bit. So we're moving in a direction of less destructive attitudes and thoughts. And so I know that was just a few months ago that they decided to started to really work on some of the language they're using. So I'm great with that. That sounds great. But when I hear friends tell me how bad it is, it hurts. It hurts. It's not good. It frustrates me. It saddens me. Because we're all taking that on. The people that are persecuting and the people that are experiencing. It's just an ugly process any way you look at it. So but it's also a beautiful process because it gets us to where we need to be.
To wrap us up, what would you tell family members or friends if they want to support someone who hears spirits or voices?
If it were me on the other side, I'd be inquisitive. I'd ask questions. I'd say, I'd get to know what they mean to the person that's experiencing them, and how, and I'd want to kind of not only work to understand them, but also understand, if it were me, my part of the process as a family member, as somebody that's on the outside, if I were on the outside, to understand that there's a connection, and that how do we navigate? So I'd want the family members to look at it as an opportunity to know that it's a chance for growth, it's a chance for finding a new relationship with things that are not so normal.
So basically a team effort.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Adrian. It's been a real treat. Best of luck in your work.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here.
To learn more about Second Story Respite House, visit secondstoryhouse.org. To read the article in which Adrian was featured, visit santacruz.com. The Hearing Voices Network USA offers support groups for voice hearers and trainings for leaders of support groups. Learn more at hearingvoicesusa.org. Intervoice is an international community focusing on solutions that improve the lives of people who hear voices, particularly those who are distressed by the experience. Learn more at intervoiceonline.org. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.